back, everybody, to Just Two Camera Guys. My name is Emery and I will be your host tonight. And joining us just off to the side, we'll see if we want to give him a microphone or not later, is Nick Lamb. I don't think we're going to get into why you don't have a microphone and I'm holding one like a fool.
We're not going to get into who forgot the mic, but we both agreed to apologize and just move on.
Yeah. So really, it's an apology to you guys. Sorry for having to sit through and suffer through us with this, or actually, maybe thank you. Yeah, we're in a new spot here. I think you can probably tell this is the Pats control room. This is where the magic happens for the Pats games every night that you're here. A bunch of gizmos that do a bunch of things. Is there anything else you really want to say about it?
Yeah, well, what can we see in the shot? We've got our graphics computer there. This is the switcher.
You can see the robot camera. There's another robot camera over there too, the controller. A little bit of the computer that's on the far side there. That does all the graphics and stuff like that. And we probably have the worst employee on the team running that one. But yeah, that's kind of it. And then behind the camera that you can't see is replay, and then the main machine that actually runs the cameras and makes them look pretty. And then, as well as each machine has a chair sitting at it. We've cleared them out, but each machine has someone that sits there and operates. So how many people are in the room?
4, 5, 6 of us in the room.
And then 4 of us out in the world. And then typically 2. And then we have our technical producers or whoever running tech that night.
They basically just run around and fix stuff.
Yeah, like actually a point in case too, like my camera specifically tonight was having a power issue, which when I was hitting the end of my zoom, they were losing control of my camera in the room here. So kind of one of the things, Rolf was the guy out there tonight and he's running around and checking on me and plugging things in and out while I'm trying to shoot. So
yeah, it helps when you have somebody that can do that. Otherwise, the director basically has to leave, and not good.
But I mean, we've talked about it before. Directors are pretty overrated.
Fake time. Really, there's only so many buttons there.
So, I was going to get into like maybe what have you been up to lately, but I feel like this is what we've both been up to lately.
Yeah, a lot of hockey lately. A lot of hockey here, a lot of hockey for Moose Jaw team. It's been a lot of hockey lately.
How many games have you been going out to Moose Jaw?
Well, 2 is all I did. I guess not a lot of hockey.
I did one out there too. And like I said, actually, this coming weekend, probably be in the past by the time we get this out, but I'll be doing the Rush preseason game out there as well.
Oh, you are doing that? Nice.
And exhibition in this building again for a week straight. It's also why this kind of like, I think our time to actually sit here and do this.
Yeah, because there's a week off. Well, half a week off and straight into rodeos.
Yeah, so it's a busy time for both of us, but it's nice that we can step up and do this. So yeah, looking at our little handy dandy notes here, it would be good if I could actually remember. We've been busy with work doing our awards things we've talked about as well. So now I'm editing all that stuff, or trying to, I should say. I haven't really got much done. Hopefully my boss isn't listening.
Editing's a tricky thing though, because especially in a workplace environment, because you've still got your regular job and then the different social media stuff that you're expected to do and all the meetings and stuff. And editing, at least in my experience, just takes large chunks of time. So you really have to dedicate kind of days and hours. It's like a construction project almost. It just takes hours and hours to get it done. So.
And then, too, like life gets in the way too, right? Like both of our cars are wrecked right now. That's a little oddity.
Yeah. How did both of our cars get written off within a week? Crazy.
Yeah. I don't know. That is pretty crazy.
Yes, we did hit each other. So it's not that crazy.
No, that's not what happened. You hit a fox or something. You said there's a lot of foxes out lately.
Yeah. A lot of, what did the fox say jokes whenever I tell anybody that.
I was driving home last weekend, and we seen probably about a dozen foxes, a couple coyotes, like everything was out. It was weird.
Big fox here.
all this hard-hitting camera news you come to expect and love on this show. Um, I guess kind of maybe moving on. There's been a lot of things happen lately, so I think I'm going to start at the end. Sort of the most recent thing was the Screen Actors Guild. It sounds like they've got their agreement sorted out. The Writers Guild sorted theirs out when we were basically on hiatus. But now Screen Actors is done, or at least they're going through the process to finalize stuff. Have you heard much of it, Nick?
I've seen, so I get a lot of Facebook posts and stuff, a lot of relieved people, but then there's some reason some people are still upset with the deal, but I know a lot of people that'll be good to get them back to work. So
yeah, and I read some stuff about like trust issues and that too, which is actually kind of interesting when you got to work on giant crews that roll out Hollywood stuff. So it'll be interesting how it does all pan out. I'm sure it'll be fine.
Yeah, it's hard to, if you're mainly just a video shooter, it's hard to picture what it's like to be a crew member on a movie, but when there's no work, it's hard because it's one of those kind of jobs that you got to save your money and then make it last throughout the year. But then when it just disappears like that, it's tricky. So yeah.
Yeah, the two big things I think that were sort of in the deal, or at least that I can remember, was one was, I actually had it on my phone, but one was the percentage on streaming service stuff. I think they got like 1 or 2% on streaming. Not too sure how that actually equates out. And then the other, I think this was more of like the hot topic thing as opposed to whether it actually really matters, but talk of how they use AI and being able to replicate us. They said specifically extras, but I don't really know about that or how that was. It doesn't sound right to me, but it's what it is.
Well, how much do you want to get into AI and ownership and who creates it? I don't know. We can if you want.
Well, they're like, I think like the deal, what they were saying was like, so an extra could come in, get paid $100 for the day, and they could basically capture everything on them, build an AI character of them, and then throw them in as an extra in every show.
Yeah. And that's, so there's, have you read anything about some of the ongoing court cases with AI and books and stuff like that?
No.
So there was an episode on Planet Money had it on, but basically what happened was there's copyrighted material. So if somebody writes a book, it's a copyrighted book. So George R.R. Martin writes his Game of Thrones, it's copyrighted. But then what happens when the AI ingests that copywritten material and then writes the last book for them? Where's the line of taking somebody's copyright and then producing something else from it? Like, how does that happen? So there's some actual court cases on right now for that.
Do you use AI?
Yes. Can I go back one step though first? So the analogy that they used in the podcast was Spotify. So when Spotify first tried to get all the licenses for stuff, they tried and then they just like couldn't. But so they just were like, wow, we're just going to put all the music on and hopefully somebody comes and finds us, kind of thing. So then they ended up getting sued. And once they got sued, then they could actually pay the people because they couldn't figure out who to get paid. So they're hoping, at least according to the podcast, that a result like that could happen with
Spotify. It was like these people that were creating AI generated mashups, like Bieber singing a rap song with Kanye or something, or whoever.
Oh, you know what? I didn't even think of that. So I was going way back to when Spotify just started.
I use it a lot at work. The thing I always say is it gets you 90% of the way. But the other thing with that is even thinking about like camera stuff in general, getting 90% of the way is half the battle. And once you're there, that's fine. And that last 10% is actually the most difficult part. For sure. And like, cause you'll get your 90. I always talk like with my photos. Like I had like 2 good years where I had solid gains where like things were happening. I was learning everything. It was a complete sponge. That was my 90%. And I feel like since then, which would have been 2015, if it was 2 years, I've been like working on that last 10%. And I'm not there, right? Like, and I'm not even close. I've got like maybe 1 or 2%.
I think my concern right now is that us as people are going to become happy with just the 90% and we won't strive for that extra 10%. That's a concern. But
I again, that 90-10% though, I think like that also like fits the market as well. So like 90% of the people are happy with the 90%.
yeah, so that's kind of sad. Is the last 10% necessary?
The last 10% is necessary because you basically AI, what it's doing is replicating stuff that's out there or what it thinks should be out there based on what's out there. So if you don't have people creating new things, doing new things, pushing limits, your AI is going to get flat and stale. Because like if you spend any time in it now, it does go flat and stale on you. Like everything you make, like, hey, write me a social media for Christmas, write me a social media for St. Patrick's Day. It'll sound almost identical.
And you know what? The last 10% does make a difference because that's what gets you extra attention now. You can actually I'm kind of talking both sides here, but you can, by being really good, you can stand out now amongst all of the crowd.
The last 10% is what keeps you employed when AI is coming in and knocking things out. I'll also say this. I do use AI quite a bit at work. So I've done flat out scripts with it. Hey, write me a script on da 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 safety issue, right? And it's written it. And yeah, it got me 90% of the way there. I went through the entire thing for the 10% to get it to where we liked it, got it approved by managers, dumped it into an AI video creator. And so basically we got this AI system that took a person, like they're talking with screen actors, scanned them all, put them into the thing, and the person spoke the words off of our thing, and we got a little headshot. I did it all on a green screen so that I can cut out around them. And then we also took it into Google Translate, translated it into Ukrainian, ran it through again and got the person speaking in Ukrainian, and then kicked out those 2 videos. But yeah, like used it actually a fair amount, and I have found it like useful. Again, though, 90-10%. You do have to watch it. Will it ever get the 10%?
Yeah.
Oh wow. I'm a dead hard like no.
I would have said that too, but it's gotten a lot better than I ever imagined. So
I think it could get like 92%. Just splitting hairs.
but no, like I don't know.
Like it will get better, but I do think, again, like I said, we still need that 10% of people pushing to basically feed AI new things. So the next big thing in the news was lenses. So now I'm jumping back to actually the first thing that came out, but Canon released 3 lenses, 2 of which had never been created before. So the first lens, I don't even remember what it was. I think it was like a APS-C one. I paid it no attention. Oh, the Pats scored a goal on our replay. That really threw me for a loop there. I guess it wasn't the Pats. So, oh wait, it was the Pats. There we go. Anyways, but there was 2 interesting lenses. One was a 100 to 300 f2.8. It was not an L lens. I seemed more jazzed about it than you.
I'm not excited about a 1 to 3.
0.8 though.
But why? Why do I need a 1 to 3?
For a guy like me, it's good. Because like I could buy that lens. It'll be cheaper than, a giant 2.8 lens. And I can go out and get what I need for whatever birds or wildlife I get out there. I think for the amateur sports photographer as well, Honestly, even like semi-pro, right? Like we had Wanda on the show. Like I could see this being a lens she would use.
How much is the lens?
I don't remember. It seemed reasonable though. I want to say it was like $3,000.
I just can't. Why wouldn't you go longer, or because you can buy a 1-4 for what, $1,000 now? Less than that?
Yeah. Did I screw this up too? Is it a 200 to 800? Here, you hold the microphone.
Okay. So because I remember the argument, because I was saying, why not just go use the 1-4? But it covered the spectrum perfectly. So this was, what was it? Was it 2 to 8? I think it was 2 to 8. Anyways, my argument's still the same of the price point doesn't seem to equal the value, to me anyway. I don't know why I would want to spend $3,000 on a 2 to 8 just because it has 2.8 when...
And it's not f2.8, it's f6.3 to f9.
I might have to actually... I'm going to leave it in.
and they're selling it for $2,000.
Man.
So I just think it hits that price point. I have the 800, that big long one, but it's it's a fixed focal length. I can't zoom back to 200. 200's right where your 70 to 200 ends, right? So it just like carries that on for me. I get that it's not a perfect lens, but I think it's a great filler. The only thing there's two things stopping me personally from getting it. One, I already have the 800. Two, it's sort of like, well, why do I need to spend more money?
That's the part that keeps getting me, is it's $3,000. And if you were going to do the lens trading game where you're selling your old lenses to get new ones, you have to sell a lot to get to there. You're going to have to kick in new money either way. Like, there's no way that I can see that you'll be able to do an even trade for that.
Yeah. And I kind of agree with that. Like I said, I the more I thought about it, the less I wanted it, but I can still see a lot of people getting it.
I could see a lot of people getting it. My preferred method is to go used with lenses, which I get that the new mirrorless lenses make that difficult, but man, patience in 3 or 4 years, and you buy the original version when version 2 comes out, it's going to be a huge savings.
The second lens that they put out is a 24 to 105 f2.8. Again, you were not jazzed about this. So shooting Leroy and Leroy, you used your 24 to 105 f4 all the time, right? 2.8 didn't appeal to you.
Well, okay. Here 2.8 does appeal to me. I've actually thought about this lens a lot lately. And this would appeal to a larger market, and it appeals to me personally more, because this is a lens that if you're in a tight interview situation, you could get away with, because 2.8, I'd prefer to shoot a little more wide open than that in an interview, but you could get something decent with 2.8, whereas getting the old ones with f4, the only thing you were getting was sharpness.
The other big thing too, which I felt like where this really suited you, was it comes with like a little control to make an actual servo zoom on it. So you could just plug this little unit in and you have a video camera lens automatically.
Yeah, I'd have to remember how to zoom again, because no, seriously, on shoots, because I've used still lenses for so long on those kind of shoots. The only time I use a zoom lens is at live sports, that I'll either move the camera or it just statics on all of my shoots now.
I think it's an interesting lens. Again, it's another lens, it's another first, and I think it is something that will appeal to a lot of people, especially a lot of hybrid people.
That one does make more sense. You know what's interesting now? Okay, I haven't even thought of this before, but the zoom, a zoom on a video, does it feel amateurish? Just so you start on, it feels newsy, doesn't it? when you think about it, okay, starting this person, you zoom out to a 2-shot, zoom into a 1. Yeah. So you're going to use that servo. This is going to keep me making employed, is because it's going to create that lens. Once people start zooming in and out, then they make stuff look bad. So that can play in our favor.
I think it depends on what you're doing, your style, and all that stuff. Like, actually, I don't know if anybody's watching the stuff behind us, but like when it shows camera 2 stuff, like I'm riding servo hard, right? Like the entire time I'm going in and out. But because it's so fast, sports, you never notice.
And that's different. I'm not talking about sports. I was talking about more of either a corporate shoot or a stylized kind of YouTube video. Or
I always considered myself, like my style, at least for video, guerrilla. I've always been into documentaries, always kind of liked it. So I always guerrilla shot in my mind. And what I mean by that is I actually never used servos. And I really liked cinema lenses. I don't know what the little stick is called on your Zoom, but like
it's literally a zoom stick.
Zoom stick. There you go, stick. And like I would just tap that, right? And just so like you're popping in and out really quick, and it's almost like a cut or a jump cut, right? So that was sort of just what the style I went with, the style I kind of did a lot. And then if I needed, I cut around it. But the cut always seemed more graceful.
So I like that. That's interesting. So your style is more guerrilla, you're willing to incorporate zooms. And so would your style be more roll on everything or only on specific things, or how does that go?
It's funny. I think like guerrilla stuff is you still roll on specific things, but the idea is like to keep pace with action, I think. And so you want to pick your spots, your moments, and that's really what it is about capturing moments and identifying which moment is important for what you're shooting.
Yeah, that does make sense. And the moments, I agree. So to make this about me, my style, I'll try to play to my strengths in any shoot I go to. And I even tried to. So when we worked on a project together, I tried to play to my strength, and I tried to get you to agree to it, but you didn't. And that's quite all right, because I wanted to get a talking head interview, because I know when I get a talking head interview, I can light it and make it look really good, and I can get good audio because it's talking head. So that's kind of what I'll try to incorporate into any video I do, is an interview, sit down to get the dialogue, because A, I know I can light and I'll be able to make it look good, and B, it's a controlled environment where I know I'll be able to get good sound. So I can always fall back on that. But this makes sense because that shoot we did was a little more guerrilla style, played into your strengths more, and I basically had to adapt, which is fine. It's just I think it turned out great, but that's interesting.
This is the SJHL one.
Yes.
Yeah, right? Like, actually, do you know what? That's, I think, kind of the perfect example of it, too. And, like, we had talked about it beforehand as well. And, I think we kind of realized, here's the other thing. I think every great documentary really, this isn't true because I've seen documentaries that are great that don't do this, but every great documentary will basically have elements of each. And I think, you need some talking head to sort of push a story through, or, a narration, whatever you want to call it. I think you do need like those nice, slow shots that, are meant to just like wow people with the spectacle of it. And then I think you need the guerrilla to keep up with action. So there's sort of those three things there. And honestly, that's how I did when I was shooting weddings, right? Everything was nice and slow. And then when something was actually happening, everything that went into the montage, guerrilla. Like, I was doing stuff in wedding videos, man, that like, I'm sure most people would be like, what? Why would you do that? Day of like shooting, they'd probably be like, that's crazy. That'll never work. And then I'll be like, ba-doop, ba-doop. Works.
That's interesting. It would have been, an interesting combination to meld our styles together at that point. I think that it would create a fairly good end product because our strengths kind of lie on different areas.
How would you describe your style?
Mine, I've tailored it after Philip Bloom is what I've gone for. I don't do this enough, but I love the long B-roll shot that kind of lingers almost longer than it's supposed to. The interview, I like having the interview lit nice. Actually, no, I like having an interview like great, where the interview itself pops, and maybe that's something I need to work on. Because if that pops, you need to have the rest of it pop too. So that's a tricky one.
That sounds to me like a technical issue, right? If your interview is going to pop, I feel like you can make the rest pop, either like with what you're doing technically in editing and color correction, or you can make it pop with speed when you're doing your action.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, you could pop with speeding up the edit a little bit. And that's tricky. That's something I do need to get a little bit better on when I'm not. It's easy when you're doing a corporate project because you've got another person there that just says, speed it up. Let's just get this down to 2 minutes or something. It's harder when it's on your own.
Yeah. Editing, man. It's really the thing that I love and hate the most at the same time because it's such a pain in the ass, but it's really where I think things flourish, and particularly where my work flourishes, which sounds weird sitting here. Nah.
Oh no, how long's that been? I don't know. Podcast only? You know what we could do? We could do one of those, go to the podcast for the rest of whatever. We'll be fine.
Do you know what? I've got a great graphic. How much do you want to edit this? Throw in there.
Yeah, let's check a graphic in.
It's one of my favorite things of all time. I keep it on my phone at all times. Technical difficulties, please stand by.
Yeah, I like that. Yeah, we'll chuck that in.
Anyways, yeah, like editing, I think is really where things all come together for me, and you can really display that stuff off. But it's so tedious. It will frustrate you. It's the only time I swear at camera work. Ricky phones out, chucking them, walking away mad.
Really? So I used to, this is a good topic for another day, but with the edit, it used to stress me out on the day. Okay, we need to get this shot. We need to get that shot. We need to get this. We need to get that. Almost everything can be made up in the edit, and you can just cover it with something else that you film after. So if a camera shot screws up or it didn't go the way I'd hoped, I don't know. It doesn't really bug me that much anymore.
Yeah. Again, just talking about guerrilla and editing, it was like a trust your shot, trust in the motion, trust the speed shooting. And so I didn't really think about it shooting. And I worry about it all in editing after, and just really focus on, what is going on, what is important, and, punch into what's important or punch out for a spectacle. Global shutter, Nick. You had an idea on this. I've had some ideas on this. I guess first off, Sony. So after Canon released their stuff, Sony released a new camera. It's the A9 Mark II, 3, 4, I don't know what.
I give us some credit for that because we were ragging on Sony pretty hard last episode, and that did not age well.
Yeah, like next week, Sony was like, screw you, Nick and Emery, you guys suck. Anyways, they came out with this camera. It has a global shutter on it. We were of two varying opinions. I was of the opinion of this is the biggest technological advancement in digital cameras since the invention of digital cameras. You think that's a bit too much. Why don't you talk about that?
Well, it's already invented. It's not like they didn't invent anything new. So if you had a car, and somebody put a clock in it, clock's already been invented, and this is even worse. They've already had all the stuff. What's the invention?
Well, that's actually kind of funny because that's how like digital cameras started, right? They already had all the stuff, and then they just put it all together to make a digital camera.
Yes, but you could previously buy a camera with global shutter. So you could buy an Arri Alexa that had global shutter. There's some Panavision cameras that do.
So a handful of cameras that cost how much?
That's not the point.
And how many like stills cameras had it in?
I guess that is the point.
Every single film camera did.
You know what? That's the good example. I like that one better. Is now we are able to recreate film cameras properly.
Yes and no. I think it operates the same way, but there's still something about the film look. There's something about it. There's something, in either it's like roll off of colors, its dynamic range, maybe has a glow to it. I don't know what it is, but like I swear, if you take a photo on film and take the exact same thing on digital, you're gonna be like, yeah, but that film one.
Yeah, I'm not arguing with you with that. Maybe I just got a little bit too excited there, but it's getting close.
It is, and it's nice to see. The other thing too was global shutters. You talk about them, this isn't, which is true, but like I said, with the camera, it's all been packaged. So do you know when the first digital camera was actually made?
92. 1975.
Yeah, that's not 1975.
Oh, the thing is.
It was made by Eastman Kodak, and it was basically pieced together. So CCD was invented by a company. It was something for computers to read light, and Kodak was like, hey, can we use this thing for something more? So they pieced it together with little parts of the cinema camera, and voila, we had digital photography for the first time in 1975. Then it took a whole pile of time for it to actually get popular, get cheap enough. This is sort of the things technology does. It gets a lot faster now than it was back then, but it just took all this time for it to actually catch up. But again, none of it was new. It was all assembled. I think the CCD was like invented like 3 or 4 years before the camera was as well. So it's just piecing things together like a car.
So with the global shutter, explain a bit about that. What we didn't even talk about what global shutter is, but make it quickly because most people know, I think. But...
Yeah, so the global shutter, if you, I think people understand like how their TV works. So your TV scans, right? So it scans your lines from top to bottom.
Does it
really fast?
I thought it did half and then the other half.
For progressive. For progressive, it's basically doing 2 frames.
So I thought that, maybe I'm wrong here, but I thought progressive, it did all of them at once, but interlaced, it did half and then half and then half and then half.
You're correct. I am wrong. You are correct. You're correct. I am wrong. You are correct. Anyways, the point is that it scans it in a line all the way down. Your camera also captures and feed information like that as well. So your sensor would, basically electrically light up. And I think like part of the reason why it had to work like this is because it was like literally sending electronic signals from one side to the other and back and forth, or however it actually worked.
We
wanted that connection to move from like positive to negative electricity.
Oh, that. But it also makes sense when you think of it like in terms of your card, because your card can only take so much information in at once. So it makes sense that there'd be a bottleneck somewhere along the line to get that much information all at once.
Yeah, I actually think that's why we are getting this now. It's because your cards are fast enough. Your processors are small enough and fast enough that you can put them into a camera. So it's actually kind of like interesting stuff, right? But there was like all these stages in between where it's like, well, let's make a slightly better CCD and call that an upgrade. Let's make a, this camera can shoot 30 frames per second now, and the old one could shoot 5. And they made all these like slow upgrades until global shutter, where it is reading everything on that sensor in one quick flash. And that's its main difference. Now, why this is revolutionary and what it does. So when it is scanning, it creates problems. I always think the easiest problem to explain is actually a video problem. It's the same problem in stills, but it's called rolling shutter. So in video, what happens when it's scanning, you can actually see it, and lots of people see it all the time. So if you move your camera side to side really quick, you'll sort of see it like lean.
Yeah.
I wonder how well that was on the microphone when you lean in the microphone.
But yeah, no, it catches up.
Yeah, and it looks like it's going at an angle, even though you're moving straight. So that's the rolling shutter problem. And that is created by those lines and that slight delay, like millisecond delay of it actually scanning all the way through and doing it over and over and over again. And then it multiplies the problem and you get that rolling shutter look in your video. Rolling shutter also happens in stills. It just looks a little bit different. So when I think the best way to explain that is in like sports. So if you do not shoot at a high enough shutter speed and you take a picture of like someone taking a slap shot, their hockey stick will look curved. Mm-hmm. And it's because of how it's scanning. Again, because you're hitting that hockey stick at different parts in that scan. So it's bending and working it. Global shutter stops that. It makes that hockey stick straight. That's also assuming it is straight. Or a puck nice and round, or a baseball nice and round. Whereas before you take it, your baseball would look like a little oval. I've got photos of that at home, right? And it's because you couldn't get the shutters fast enough. We talked about cameras. I think one of the interesting one is the Phantom. So the Phantom's this like super absurd high-speed camera. They needed a global shutter in order to get the speed that they shoot at. If you can't, they're shooting at like, I don't even know, it's like 100,000 frames per second or something. But in order for them to read that fast enough, they needed the global shutter for that. Because otherwise you just can't. So that's another like perk of this A9. It all of a sudden shoots way faster shutter speeds than cameras have had before. Trying to think, it does some other stuff too, like it'll fix some like moire problems and that as well that you get in some digital. I mean, you'll still have it, it just won't be as bad. Or trying to think the name of like the green artifacting, green purples that, why am I blanking on what that's called?
Fringing.
Thank you. Yeah, fixes a few of those things a little bit. And yeah, a handful of other little problems that there was no way to fix until then.
Yeah, it's cool, but...
Oh, and not to mention the price. So I want to say red is actually the cheapest camera. I could be wrong on this, but I want to say it's like the cheapest camera you can get with it. And I think they have one that actually is in an $8,000 video camera, but it only shoots video. Then your next step up, it's like 30 or 40. And that's where all those cameras that you mentioned basically start.
Yeah, no, you're right. I think the Scarlett has it.
So this gets it down to a consumer level for the first time. So now you can buy, what's the cost of this? Like $6,000, $5,000.
Everything I've seen is US. I haven't even looked up the Canadian one.
Yeah. Anyways, it comes down to like more of a consumer level cost. And hopefully, and again, where this is really, really big is hopefully this technology trickles down into their lower markets. Maybe not their entry level, but like a camera that I would use that's, maybe a $3,000 camera.
Yeah. This goes back to a lot of the stuff. I don't know if a lot of people are going to be able to see the difference. is my only hesitation. I'm not going to jump out and buy this camera right away. So I'm excited, but I'm not. I don't need a cold shower to cool down. Like, yeah, I'm not selling all my Canon gear and running the selling right now.
Yeah, for sure. I'm in the same boat too. Like I'm waiting for Canon. I would expect they're going to come out with an R1 shortly here, and it's also going to be global shutter. For myself, I'm going to wait until it comes down to like an R5 or something. And that's just, again, it's a matter of wait. I'll probably be using my USR for the next 2 or 3 years. And maybe in that time, it does come to an R5. And that's when I upgrade.
Yeah. The timing could actually be really good for me because I still use my C200. And this would give it another 2 to 3 years. And then time for upgrade then. And this would actually push me to an upgrade when that time comes. But
here's the real question too. I said like maybe this doesn't come to like the entry stuff, but am I maybe wrong? Like, 15 years down the road, does everything have a global shutter?
I'm saying no.
What about your iPhone?
That's yes. Yes, I'd say it will. Because that's going to be a cool thing to advertise.
Yeah, and again, like fixing some of those problems, I'm sure everyone has seen them.
Yeah, and so have you shot much on your iPhone for production stuff?
Yeah. Now, what we started doing with our videos, basically, I started focusing at work, like. We purchased a 70 to 200 lens for our camera. Why? Because that's something an iPhone can't do. So anything wide we do, I shoot on my iPhone. So these award videos that I all did, using that long lens for everything that I can. Second, I need something wide, iPhone. And it's all B-roll. I'll just mix it in. That's perfectly fine.
Yeah. My biggest complaint with the iPhone is the low light stuff. It does not low light.
My biggest complaint with the iPhone is that it does way too much over processing.
Yes. So if you place, and I've done this where I've taken a shot that I've got on my C200 and then iPhone, and the image still breaks down. It's not there, and the ProRes files are so tricky to get off of your silly phone that it takes so long, and it's not really.
That's interesting. I've not heard that. Lots of people have been talking praise about the ProRes on it.
Yes, but so my mistake that I've done with the ProRes is I'll use it for a second. Oh, I'll grab a second angle or whatever. Hit record on the interview. You don't want to start and stop it because you got to resync a bunch of stuff. You got a 30-minute ProRes file. That's fun.
Yeah. I only have the Mini 13, so I don't have that enjoyable stuff. But when I do compare it, so at work we shoot on a Canon RP. The interviews I just did, we did on the cheap Nifty 50s.
Yeah.
Actually, even the EF version, not even the RF. And then what is that, $150 lens? And then I shot when I could on the 70 to 200 as well, f2.8. And that's what I did our interviews on. And then I'm going to mix this iPhone stuff in. Is it perfect? Hell no. Like you know right away, like, oh, this is iPhone. But it's good enough. And then the other, like I said, just quality wise, like I said, there's some like weird over processing where they're over sharpening, overdoing a bunch of other things. And it almost like degrades the image. And when you look at the other ones, you're like, how come this one looks so nice? This looks so smooth. And then this one's like this weird, like, why does this hair look like I can see every little speck of hair? It's the weirdest thing.
Yeah, that's exactly right. And as of now, the cinema feature that'll blur the background, I actually like it. It looks pretty good. But that's not in ProRes yet. So unless I'm just missing a setting, I can't seem to figure out how to get that in ProRes.
I'm going to go with you just can't figure it out. Yeah, global shutter, man.
Oh yeah.
Another good tangent, but like, I don't know how much more to say about it. It really is going to change photography and videography from this point on.
It does. It will. I personally feel like there's a bit of an overreaction from the YouTube community, but you almost think it was an underreaction. So
I don't know. Like I said, I'm like at the point like where I do see like this sort of changes everything, and it makes everything so much better for guys like you and me. And but at the same time, I also realize like it doesn't make things really that better for guys like you and me until like 5 years down the road.
yeah, because we're too cheap.
Do you know what? I was thinking about this. It's not that we're cheap. I think this is like the reality of the situation. Most people who are actually out working and doing things, not that I'm working, but that are, well, at work, but not like this really. But most people that are working and doing these things, you know, they're using workhorses and they're using those things that work. And you know, to go back to like something that you say, if I buy a $3,000 camera today, is it going to make me $3,000 of money? Probably not. You're still going to get the same jobs. No one is going to go like, oh man, that looks like you weren't using the global shutter.
Yeah, no, it's just a matter of you only can spend so much money on gear, and then you just can't.
And in 5 years, you know, you might get that. What I just said that you won't get, no one will be like, look, and you going, oh, you must not have a global shutter. In 5 years, that might happen when it becomes more common, but you got time.
Yes.
Yeah. What's next on the docket?
See.
I feel like I probably should have wrote the list down on my phone.
Yeah. I say we skip the reviews. That'll be lots of time for later. The tips. I say we go straight into selfish shame and wrap up. And we can save those two for another show.
All right. Yeah. Do you know what? No, let's not skip this. Let's rip.
We'll go fast. Okay.
I'm going to go.
Why don't we do the 2 minutes? Emery PTI style.
Emery reviews Nick's Halloween video with honest feedback. 2 thumbs down.
That's fair.
Do you know what?
It's not the greatest piece of work, but I thought it was interesting.
Yeah, it's fine for what it is.
Yeah.
If people want to go watch it at Nick Lamb Videos on YouTube.
Yes.
Halloween. It's kind of some interesting stories.
I think it's Nick Lamb.
And yeah,
it's just Nick Lamb. Yeah.
Just Nick.
I think my YouTube's just Nick Lamb.
I think it's Nick Lamb Video.
Is that isn't?
Oh, you can't use that. We're recording, Nick. We're going to mess it up again.
Yeah, it'll be fine. Yeah, it's just Nick Lamb at Nick Lamb Video. Oh, you're right.
Yeah, Nick Lamb Video. Go there, check it out. Do you know what? I like these little passion video things you do. I've always liked them. I hope you keep doing them.
Well, they're fun to make. And the way I've been filming them, I'm trying to figure out a way that it's less editing. Because a huge edit for something like that's a bit of a pain. So I think that's also my downfall with this last video, was I let too much stuff in. Didn't edit it out.
Interesting. Yeah, I think that's probably like a common problem. You didn't edit it out. Like, it's really hard to, like, how many minutes of footage would you have in total? Hours?
That one's not too bad. I probably got hour and 20 minutes.
Cut down to how long?
10, 12 minutes, something like that.
Like, that's hard. So the fact that, sure, it might not be perfect, but honestly, I think when you're doing something like that, it's more about the process than the final results. So keep doing it and just keep working at it. And I like the style of it. I like what's going on. It's just, you just need to keep working, keep refining, coming up with new ideas, and always be improving. What there was ABC from Glenn Ross was always be
closing. What's theirs? Yeah, that's more sales.
Is there like a good ABC for camera? Always be cameraing.
Yeah. No, always be capturing.
But yeah. Again, Nick Lamb Video on on YouTube. Go check it out. This is an interesting one. Tips for people just getting into live sports. This sort of coming full circle. We're going to basically end where we started to this control room. Where do you want to start with this?
So I'll start past the get a job, all that stuff. But I would say your first day operating a camera, what would you be needing to think about? So you show up, you get there, you already know a little bit of how to use a tripod and all that stuff. What do you need to do?
Listen.
Interesting. That's probably good advice. That would not have been my advice.
Where would you go?
Well, I would have gone into way too much detail because I would have been thinking, okay, don't get married to your monitor. Be sure to look at your surroundings with your eyes. Because your eyes, if you're just looking, it's hard to find something interesting if you're just looking at your monitor and your camera. And it's also easy to miss something happening. For example, hockey is an easy one to miss. If you're just looking at your monitor, you'll lose puck all the time.
Yeah. I feel like just listening is a big part of it. Like, one, when you're in the room or whatever, talking, BSing before, like, people are going to tell you stuff. Listen to what they have to say. Even like, I remember going back to like when we did the Winter Classic game here for the NHL, and like everything was like very specific, very planned. I'd never experienced anything like that. And they had very specific jobs that they wanted you to do. And all you really needed to do was just listen to them and do what they told you. And so like, I don't think their expectations were through the roof. I don't think like when you're new, other people have those expectations.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, just listen. And then the other big thing, like with listening, is you're on headsets, you're communicating with a bunch of people. We're bad with that. Like we get jibber jabbering about whatever and making jokes and stuff, which makes it fun. But when you're new, I think that probably makes it hard. So like you probably just need to spend most of your time in that scenario, just listening, waiting for your calls, watching, paying attention. Another thing too, like visual listening. We don't have like a preview here, so I can't really tell what I'm shooting here, what's going out. But I do have a giant screen right in front of my face, so I'm watching everything all the time. When I shoot the riders, again, for an example, there is a preview button, so I just pull a button and it comes into my monitor as to what they're replaying. So when they ship my replay, I will watch it and be like, okay, that's what they left. I need to do more of that. So it's just listening to like what's done there. Or honestly too, like if you really don't know what you're doing, like I'm shooting this rush game, I'm probably going to Google some lacrosse stuff just to see what they're doing and then go into Moose Shot and try to replicate that. And if there's anything, that I'm seeing that, Bryce is taking that he's liking, just keep trying to replicate that.
Yeah. So listening, what are you listening for though? Who are you? Because there's always a lot of people talking. So who are you listening to?
That's actually really a funny thing. And I think that's maybe a skill as well that you learn all the time, but you learn your camera number. So camera 2, or if you're on a bigger thing, you'll learn your replay number with the riders. My replay call was red 3 most of the time this year. If it wasn't, I would try and figure it out during the game by watching things like, okay, so then I know. Is that necessary? No, but like the big part is to listen to the call of your camera, what it is. Lots of times I'm like weirdly droned out on some things, and but like that camera 2 just like snaps me in. And then I think what you were getting at was, what am I listening to? Well, you're the director of our show, so you're kind of the main guy that I listen to, and then Lane as well, who is the game day guy for the Pats, because he generally what Lane says is what's going to happen next. So if he's like, kiss cam's going to happen, I know that's going to happen next. So if Lane says kiss cam, I know that's what's next, and so I can already be prepping and thinking ahead to that.
Yeah. Yeah, so it's almost half of the stuff is the play. And then with our live stuff, the other half is all the other promotions or commercials or what would you call it? Crowd stuff, I guess.
Crowd activation.
Yeah, that's I'm not saying it's as big of a. It almost is. It's all. I'd say it's almost half and half. Half the stuff's being able to follow the play. The other half is listening to your. You're right. That's all it is listening, and then you can go find your shot.
And if you have a good sense to like some prep, I talked about watching some lacrosse videos for myself. That's it. Even going back to like when I shot weddings, I showed up on rehearsal day, so I knew what was going on, so that I can plan where my camera needed to be before it happened.
Yeah, it's harder to know this ahead of time, but something that I always like to do, especially on tube, is I'll get my kind of like playing a musical instrument. You play guitar or anything, but you kind of learn your chords. It's okay. This is the D man to the net, and I can stop. So I've got I know my movement there. It's just figuring out your what is it? Your fine motor control.
Yeah, like those repetitive actions. That's always good as well. Actually, kind of like another thing too that I'll say about it. I think shooting hockey and playing hockey also make like this weird correlation where I think they both improve each other. Like I think I got better at hockey the more Pats games I shot, and I think I got better at shooting more Pats games the more hockey I did. And it was like sort of they fed off each other, and I was learning from like each of them, and they just created like this cycle of improvement.
I can say this because I saw a adult safe playing before the Warrior game when I was doing their game. Whatever improvement you thought you were doing was in your head because it's different things.
That's slightly different. This room. So you direct the show. Do you have any tips for that?
I need tips personally. That's where the tips come from. And by that, it's the truth though, because I'll say that every time. If somebody's got something to say it, because we do want to.
I think like prep work, right? Like, so not to like bash anyone or something, but before you came in, like we didn't run through shows. We didn't do these sort of things to plan ahead. And now that's done every single time. And like, does it help? Does it, make everything run smoother during the live event?
Yeah, that's me going back to my camera assistant days where you would not go out you wouldn't show up to film the movie without testing the gear first, and you wouldn't. And there's so many pieces here. There's so many elements to the show that.
Yeah, I think that's like, so the word you use is communicating there. Listening is also a big part of that. So I think like if you're working in a room like this with a lot of people, learn to listen, learn to communicate well.
Yeah. And maybe this is something that I need to work on a little bit more, but just be patient because you'll want something right then, but it doesn't happen at that pace. So I'm more speaking to myself right now. Just be patient with it. And I don't think that freaking out speeds it up. At least in my experience, it doesn't. But for some reason, it's the common theory that people have that freaking out will make it go faster and better next time. I doubt it will.
I'm smiling at your thing. Like, do you get mad at yourself at what you do here?
Less and less. And I don't know if that means if that's a good thing or a bad thing. But sometimes you just hit the wrong button.
So my camera has an audio feed on it, right?
Yes. No, I think Ken's does. Because we can hear Ken half the time.
Okay, good. Don't hear me swearing at myself.
No, there's been several complaints from the fans.
I swear, sometimes those fans like that sit in front of us like must think we're crazy because we're laughing at like random things. Like, we'll just be silent out there, and all of a sudden I'm like losing it laughing.
Yeah. I don't know. It's fun. It's a cool. What would you call it? A second job or side gig or something to get into if somebody does want to. You don't necessarily have to be into both camera and sports. I'd say that if you were into cameras, you could get into the sport and study it up. And if you're into the sport side of things, you could get into the camera and learn how to do that as well.
Do you know what? I'm going to add one more thing. Thinking our good buddy Matt Howard was at the game today. And I always say it, but the reason Matt has gone through work and gotten everything and improved how he has kind of goes back to learning, but it also really goes back to just being a good person. So, and honestly, I think, it's not a camera job. It's not a sports thing. Like, just be a good person. And that makes it all the more fun to work with those people. And when you're in an environment where you're working with a large team, it's just everything about it's going to be better.
Agreed. Yeah.
Do you want to do a shelf of shame? We've got a whole lot of shelf here.
Yeah.
Probably a whole lot of shame.
A whole lot.
I'm just going to say, I think most of the shame probably sits in that chair right over there. Out Ocean Rocket.
Yeah.
Matt Ramsey, you know who you are. And yeah, and that they've broken stuff all over the place in here.
The biggest thing in here is we'll get scripts. And Ryan came in here the other day and he said, "Are we using any of these scripts?" And there was a big stack of old scripts that I just had like lying around.
Yeah, we should probably clean up more often. A clean workspace makes it a little bit better, but it honestly, I feel like every control room is usually a bit of a disaster like this, especially with, long hauls. When you're doing like back to back shows, like after rodeo, this place is a disaster.
Yeah. Actually, I think we need to figure out how to close that thing. We got to lock up today.
Hopefully we don't set off the alarm.
Yeah, we should probably get going.
Is there anything left on our list? Do you remember?
No.
All right, cool.
Let's wrap it up.
We'll wrap it up. We'll call it a night. Hopefully Nick can piece this together. We had a few technical difficulties, I will say, with it's bound to happen when we're running some of the Mickey Mouse thing like this. But
we're on the road.
I mean, actually, the other shelf of shame we should talk about is the lack of a second microphone.
Okay. You know what? I'm probably going to start this whole video off with an apology. Okay. You sure didn't care. I forgot the mic. There's a lot of mic talk. Yes, I forgot the mic.
Do you know what? You had a lot of pressure put on you to bring a mic and a computer. I mean, 50% isn't bad. If it was a batting average.
But I forgot the cable like that I was going to. And I knew that you thought that my computer took HDMI straight in. And I knew, no, I've got to convert it. And then I forgot that. I didn't bring anything.
It happens. We're not in $1 million studio. We don't have $1 million to make stuff. But do you know what? Actually, that's probably what makes us a little more authentic than a lot of other people out there. So.
Yeah, bad audio. That's what separates us.
That's what separates us from the rest. Cool. With that said, have a good night, everybody, and we'll talk to you next time. You're correct. I am Marlon. You are correct.